cannot stop natural disasters, but we can arm ourselves with knowledge. So many lives wouldn't have to be lost if there was enough disaster preparedness. Petra Nemkova.
Hey Chotu, what are you sniffling at the trail of ants for? They are all carrying seeds to their underground home, probably. As my Master Ji would say, they are saving for a rainy day.
Not only are the ants saving for the rainy day, but you must have noticed your ma also storing all the rice and wheat in the big stone jars. Who knows, once the rains start, they may lash down with full force, and for days on end, it may be difficult to get anything from the market, especially if there is any flooding.
Ma has even gone to the extent of dragging all those pots up onto the attic in case our house gets flooded. She says in the past few years we have been having very intensive rains. Could it be due to climate change?
Indeed, climate change is causing extremes of weather and frequent heavy rains, even cyclones in some places, while in other places it is causing droughts. Preparedness is a very important step to disaster management for disasters caused by nature.
Even Pitaji has been working hard, rethatching our roof with coconut fronds to make sure the house does not leak. I hope they take the step of preparedness in our school too. Otherwise, they will have to keep closing school on days of extremely heavy rainfall and flooding.
Disaster management is becoming a very crucial issue nowadays. Very fortunately, we do have a government body, the National Disaster Management Authority, which lays down the rules for management of disasters.
But someone should make sure that those rules are being followed everywhere, isn't it, Dadaji?
You are right. It is important that every district, town, or city has a team of people to ensure that these rules are implemented and the 4 phases of management: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery are strictly followed. Disasters could strike at any time, with or without warning, and could result in loss of life, property, jobs, and even spread diseases.
Did you hear that, Chotu? Disaster management is very important. Dadaji, can you please tell us the stories about disasters?
First of all, there are 3 types of disasters: natural, man-made, and hybrid.
What are hybrid disasters?
A combination of man-made and natural. Let me see. Can you think of any hybrid disasters?
I know. When people cut down trees, even moderately heavy rains can lead to landslides, as the roots that hold on to the soil are no longer there.
Bilkul sahi. Let me tell you about some disasters that have made history. Before the First World War, the Great Plains of America were converted from grasslands into fields of wheat. For several years, the plentiful harvests made the farmers rich. People called these plains the breadbasket of Midwest America. But by growing the same crop year after year, what do you think happened?
Did the land lose all its nutrients?
Bilkul theek. The land became depleted of nutrients and also water. It could not support the growth of any more crops. This led to a severe drought. The topsoil became a loose layer of dust.
Ayyo! Something like desertification?
Yes, and one day in April 1935, there were very strong winds that swept the dust into thick clouds, hundreds of miles wide and thousands of feet high, turning day into night and lasting for several hours. This day went down in history as Black Sunday. The rich green plains, the very bread basket of America, had been turned into a dust bowl by man's own thoughtlessness.
Ayyo, did it cause a lot of harm to the people?
Oh, yes. Thousands of people became homeless, and several million people had to pack up and move elsewhere.
How sad. The dust must have gone into their lungs also.
Yes, people suffered from dust pneumonia, which was termed as brown plague.
Okay. So, this was another example of hybrid disaster. What about natural disasters, Dadaji?
Nature can unleash her fury in many ways. One of them is earthquakes, which are unpredictable.
What causes earthquakes?
The tectonic plates deep inside the Earth's mantle, which form a part of the Earth's lithosphere, may be shifting or colliding into one another, and that could lead to tremors.
Have there been earthquakes in India?
I remember way back in 2001 on 26th January.
Oh, on Republic Day?
Yes. There was a terrible earthquake in Gujarat, measuring 7.7 on the moment magnitude scale, which means it was a very devastating earthquake. Thousands of buildings were flattened, just as many people died.
Did the government help those who lost their homes?
Yes, they responded by giving people compensations in the form of money, and homes were built for them. Clothes, medicines, and food were provided not only by the government but by many volunteers. Many people were buried alive under the rubble. The rescue teams had to be very careful while unearthing these trapped people. That is when sniffer dogs came in handy.
Our Chotu also has a very good sense of smell. I should try and train him for such a calamity.
If it had been possible to predict earthquakes, then preparedness and mitigation would have reduced the effects of the tragedy by less than half. The National Disaster Management Committee would have evacuated the people from their homes to safer areas along with their belongings.
What about other natural disasters that made history, Dadaji?
On 26th December 2004, there was another massive earthquake, but this time it was in the Indian Ocean near the Sumatra island of Indonesia. This caused the ocean floor to rise a great deal. Within minutes, huge waves more than 100 feet high hit the shores of the nearby islands, and one by one the coastlines of Thailand, India and Sri Lanka. This was the deadliest tsunami the world has ever seen.
What a shock it must have been. Imagine people on the beach enjoying themselves, children playing, some people swimming, and suddenly they see such huge waves racing towards them like a huge army. No time to run away from them.
In fact, the people were surprised and even delighted to see the sea having receded very far out for the first time. That is the first sign of a tsunami. But people did not know. They walked further towards this exposed low tide zone, and then came the massive waves that swept away everything in sight.
What about the wildlife? The tsunami waves must have drowned so much of the wildlife in the jungles of Indonesia and the other countries.
As the stories go, wild animals sensed by instinct that something ominous was to happen. They fled to the higher regions and escaped.
Oh, I suppose Chotu too is capable of sensing such disasters. Although he has become so much a part of our human family, he still shows his wild instincts sometimes.
Like the way he sniffs at new places and pees, leaving his signature to assert his territory there.
And what about the mangroves? Did they not play their role of shore soldiers during the tsunami, Dadaji?
My dear Kunti, I am glad you ask so many questions. For by asking questions, we get to learn more. Indeed, for those places that had mangroves along their shores, the impact of the tsunami was much less. But in those places where the mangroves had been destroyed to make way for hotels and other buildings, there was a lot of devastation. Now, Kunti, let me see if you can name another type of natural disaster which has become very frequent as of late, both on the east as well as the west coast of India.
You mean cyclones? Last monsoon, Master Ji was telling us about cyclone Taukte that struck the west coast of India and caused so much havoc. Many lives were lost and trees uprooted and crops damaged.
Bilkul sahi.
But how is a cyclone formed, Dadaji? And what does Taukte mean?
Bombardment of questions. Cyclones arise when a huge mass of air containing clouds rotates around a center of low pressure. In the northern hemisphere, it rotates in an anti-clockwise direction, while in the southern hemisphere, it rotates in a clockwise direction. Now for your second question. Myanmar named this cyclone after Taukte, the very noisy lizard found in Indonesia.
Dadaji, you are like an encyclopedia. Were the disaster management teams prepared for the cyclone?
The Indian Meteorological Department had known about the cyclone through their satellites. They warned people to stay indoors, and those living in coastal areas were asked to evacuate for their own safety. Coast guards were posted everywhere and rescue ships sent out to help any fishermen stranded in their boats.
What about volcanoes, Dadaji? What is their story?
I was just coming to that. Volcanoes are openings in the Earth's crust through which molten rocks, lava, and hot gases erupt. The most recent volcanic eruption was in the Spanish Canary island of La Palma. Hundreds of properties were destroyed and thousands of people fled from their homes, many of which were completely buried in the lava and ash.
Can those who lost their homes rebuild new homes there?
They can, but they will have to wait for a whole year for the lava which comes out from deep down inside the earth's core to cool.
Did you hear the story, Chotu? Nature is so powerful. We humans think we are so clever. But there are times when we are helpless against her power.
That is so very true. Although there had been volcanic eruptions on the island way back in 1971, people developed the area, building community homes, nurturing fruit orchards, and farmlands, certain that the volcano was now extinct. But when mild tremors were felt under the mountain range in September 2021, scientists began to suspect the magma was pushing its way out from under the Earth's surface.
Thank goodness we don't have any volcanoes around here. Dadaji, what about forest fires? Masterji had mentioned some time back that there was a massive bushfire in Australia last year.
Forests and grasslands contain a lot of fuel in the form of wood, both living and dead, dried leaves, twigs, etc., which can be sparked into flames most easily, either by lightning or by human carelessness. People sometimes leave behind cigarette stubs that have not been put out or campfires that are still simmering even after they have left the place. Yes, if the weather is dry and hot, it is enough to kindle this into huge flames. Added to this, if there are strong winds, the fire can easily spread.
Ayyo! That is so sad for the wildlife in the forest.
In addition to loss of wildlife, the trees which normally act like carbon sinks give off huge amounts of carbon dioxide that they had been holding when they are ablaze.
Oh, that again would add to the greenhouse gases and increase global warming.
Bilkul sahi. Bushfires are a regular feature in Australia since 50 million years. In the United States and Siberia too, there are regular forest fires.
But when the hot and dry season sets in, can't the authorities in those places do something to prevent the fires?
Wisely said. Yes, the authorities create fire breaks, which means they deliberately burn off a long line of grass, bushes, and scrubs to cut off the fuel and prevent any fire from spreading.
Do fires take place in the forests of India too, Dadaji? Here, too many places become very hot and dry in the summer.
Yes, sadly, with global warming, the likelihood of fires is rising by the year. The Forest Department posts volunteers to ensure that people do not smoke inside a forest or light any form of fires.
How do the disaster management teams put off such huge areas of forest fires?
That is a very difficult job. They can only do so from airplanes or helicopters, spraying the areas with gallons and gallons of water or firefighting chemicals. But having said all this, some of the natural forest fires are helpful for the environment. The fire burns off all the dead litter that accumulates on the forest floor, enriching the soil with the ash and giving way to fresh new saplings to grow. Also, certain seeds require such high temperatures to germinate.
Are there any other kinds of natural disasters whose stories you still have to tell, Dadaji?
Yes, the story of the tornadoes or twisters, as they are called. Fortunately, they are hardly ever seen around here, but frequently occur across the United States, especially in Texas, Kansas, and Oklahoma states. A tornado comprises of a huge funnel of swirling clouds within which winds of more than 350 kilometers per hour blow over slower ones. When this funnel extending from the thunderclouds reaches the ground, it becomes a tornado.
Wow! What damage does it cause?
The swirling funnel can suck up dirt, giving it a dark, angry look, and even cars and roofs of houses. Debris gets flung everywhere, making it dangerous for anyone in the vicinity.
Ayyo! How do tornadoes rise?
Usually during fierce thunderstorms, when the cool air from the north meets the warm air from the south.
Dadaji, you have told me so many stories about disasters, but I am still hungry for some more. What about man-made disasters? Please?
Your sweet pleading makes it impossible to refuse. I shall tell you 3 more stories about man made disasters. First of all, let me tell you about a disaster way back in 1986 in the Ukraine region of Russia. There was an accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant that resulted in a high degree of nuclear radiation being released into the air.
Nuclear radiation is dangerous, na?
It can lead to cancer. Innumerable people died right away because of the radiation, but thousands were affected over the months to come. Everybody evacuated in a hurry, and the place became a ghost town, as the radiation can linger on for years and years.
What about the animals there? Were they too affected?
Animals as well as humans suffered from odd growths and birth defects.
That is so heartbreaking.
Another similar disaster had taken place earlier in 1984, closer to home in Bhopal, when the Union Carbide insecticide plant exploded and leaked the poisonous gas cyanide, which spread to the nearby towns, killing thousands of people. Even the drinking water got contaminated, leading to health problems among many people.
What a tragedy.
The third story is about oil spills. There have been several oil spills in our oceans when oil tankers come across accidents. Not so much human life gets affected though.
But all the beautiful creatures in the sea do get affected, isn't it? The oil can spread with the ocean waves and currents for miles and miles. I do hope there are very strict rules laid down for all oil tankers now.
And now we should be returning home for lunch. I can hear rumblings in my stomach. I hope there is no disaster happening inside. We better return soon. But while we return home, it is your turn now to tell me the story of the latest disaster which has struck the whole world.
Ah, yes, I know all about it. The coronavirus COVID-19 has been spreading a new type of disease throughout the world, and that is why it is considered as a pandemic. It probably began in the wildlife markets of Wuhan, spreading from the animals to people. The whole world was under a lockdown for several months as more and more people were being affected and many dying. Since it can spread through droplets containing the virus, people throughout the world have begun wearing masks in public places. Fortunately, they have now found a vaccine to immunize people against the disease.
Fortunately, it does not affect our pet dogs and cats.
Otherwise, Chotu, you too would have to wear a mask everywhere and sanitize your paws all the time. But on a serious note, Dadaji, I am going to write a poem about disasters and spread the word to people.
And so, Kunti composed the following poem. We need to avoid any disasters. Play safe now and ever after. Let preparedness, mitigation be the motto for all nations. Carelessness, thoughtlessness have a huge price to pay. Only those who have suffered know its big evil face. Let not greed lead to regrets. Playing safe is the best bet.